to a show.
Welcome. What's up? Hi, folks. This is Off the Mess Podcast. It's Dante. This is a weird intro, I know, but it's been a long day. So we're gonna get here and we're gonna do some podcasting. So welcome everybody and thank you for listening. This week on the podcast, I'd like to welcome back a returning guest. It's weird to say welcome back a returning guest because you're kind of doubling down on what you just said, but either way, I want to welcome a returning guest to the podcast from way back when. I want to say maybe I'm trying to remember episode numbers, but you know what? Let's not even do that. I'm welcoming back to the show Miss Jennifer Thompson. And Jennifer is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, Krav Maga, karate. You know, she's a martial artist, basically. She's a superhero, for lack of a better term. So I just wanted to have her back on and do some chit-chat. So Jennifer, welcome back. How you feeling?
Thanks for having me. I'm feeling pretty good. I just got off work, so I'm a little bit tired, but I just made myself a margarita, so I'm ready to chit-chat.
Love the way you're thinking. Like I got home and played Nintendo Wii with my daughter, and I looked at the time. I was like, okay, I still got time. My wife goes, you want me to go ahead and make dinner now? I was like, I mean, you can make dinner. I'll eat, after I'm about to record. So she finishes up dinner and I'm still playing Wii, but I'm just finishing up. So I'm like, okay, let me go down and set up now. She goes, oh, you can come on in and like, let's go ahead and sit down and eat. I was like, wait, I got to record. Like, so that evening rush to get to recording is always a crazy one because like you say, you just got off of work. I got off work not too long ago myself. So it's like, all right, there's no relaxing. Let's just jump into this. But I just wanted to really sit down and chat with you and, catch up, see how things are going in your world of martial arts and in training and everything for you.
Yeah, everything's, it's been an interesting time. I can't remember. Yeah. So so me and my husband, we moved to St. Catharines. For people in Canada will know where that is, but I suppose for people in the States, we moved from another place that's about an hour north. And with that, we were kind of, for a little while, traveling back and forth between one of the places we were training at, where we used to live, and then training part-time where we currently live. And so, we were going back and forth quite a bit, which, the club we were at, Octa BJJ, and we're still, kind of involved there, trying to go, as much as we can, with the time we have available. But now we're training more regularly in St. Catharines, again, another great gym, Niagara top team. And so it's been a kind of an interesting transition, because the place we were training at so Octa BJJ is in Oakville. And they do nogi, they do a lot of gi, very traditional Brazilian style BJJ, lots of different dynamics with using the gi, and stuff like that. But where we're training now, Niagara top team, there's a little bit more of a no-gi focus because it's MMA oriented. So they have a lot of MMA fighters at this gym. So there's like a couple UFC fighters, a couple Bellator fighters, a lot of Muay Thai people. But a lot of people are kind of training up towards being MMA practitioners. And so they definitely have more of a wrestle up style. I think most people orient themselves more towards no-gi. So it's kind of been interesting transition. It's been great because learning a lot more about no-gi when, we've always kind of been more oriented towards the gi. So it's been really interesting as far as jiu-jitsu is concerned.
Oh, good. And prior to going to the new gym where it's, more no-gi, like how much no gi had you been doing prior, if any at all, or was it all just strictly gi before?
No, there was some no-gi before. It was just, I think, the classes we attended, I think they had probably um roughly equal amounts of gi to no-gi. I think the classes that we were attending, just because that's how it worked with our schedule, was generally gi. And I, have a background in wrestling as well. So I feel actually more comfortable in no-gi on a organic level based on that previous training. But I do really like the gi because you're able to use it more so as a weapon, as a tool. And there's a lot of really cool ways you can do that, through like worm guard and squid guard and all these different ways of using it that are a little bit more outside the box. I think Nogi's great, particularly if you're just looking at things from a modern self-defense perspective. Like nobody walks around with a gi on, particularly in the summer. So you're not going to have the same handles or the same tools. But at the same time, in Canada, we have the winter. There's a lot of jackets, which acts the same way as a gi jacket does. So I do think it's still important to understand how you can use it as a tool and as a weapon.
Sure, sure. I was just talking to one of my teammates about. I had a friend who came over from Ireland and visited for a couple of days, and well, a few days, not a couple of days, but and he primarily trains in the gi, and he and I kind of talked about gi versus no gi. I never look at jiu-jitsu in that light of gi versus gi, which is better. I think it's all grappling at the end of the day. It's but I do feel like to be a complete grappler, you got to kind of understand both. You can't just say, oh, well, we only do no gi here. And, on the other side of it, you have a lot of fellas and gals that do gi and they're like, I don't really like no gi. And, it's fine to not like, you have your preferences, but it's, still got to kind of understand both to some degree because whether it's self-defense or, whatever, you know, you're going to end up in a situation where, you might be doing no gi or you might not have access to the gi or usage of it. And I know for a while when I would train in the gi, I still train in the gi, but a lot of times in the gi, I would try to avoid using the lapels and the sleeves if I could, just to have that feel of, this grip is always here. Now I'm always going for the Kimura grip. So
Mhm.
that's my go-to in no gi, and I use it in gi. It gets a little bunched up and weird in the gi,
Yeah.
but no gi, it's always there.
Yeah, I think the advantages of no gi is that anything you can do without a gi, you're going to be able to do it in a gi. But there are certain things that you can do in a gi that you will not be able to do. So if you start to depend on those aspects of gi defense or offense, and then all of a sudden you're in no gi, and that's your go-to, you're kind of left with nothing to turn to assist you. At least if that's the type of, because we all rely on our neural pathways when we're stressed, and so if the neural pathway is consistently towards the gi, and then you start to get involved in no gi, it's gonna want to go in a path that isn't accessible.
Yeah, it. I always try to, if I can, try to get a collar tie, instead of going for a lapel, grip. But there are times, it's kind of like pick and choose. That's not to say, okay, I'm, doing gi, but I'm only gonna, I'm just gonna avoid all these grips. It's like,
Yeah.
no, you kind of, still use your grips, but there are times where, like, let's say you're just flow rolling, you want to, kind of joke around a little bit with your teammate. It's like, oh, I'm gonna not go for any grips because, it's like thinking about trying to play spider guard
Yeah.
like in Nogi. It's like I've seen people put up posts doing it, and sure, I guess you could, but it's, I mean,
Definitely
you
not.
have the lapel.
Yeah, it's not as easy. Sorry, my cat is screaming at me, so you might hear a little bit of that. Sorry about
It's
that.
it's all right. Everyone's welcome on this show. Cats, dogs. Hey, I had a guest who had birds in the background chirping away. I was like, hey, we all family here.
Yeah, she hates it when I'm talking to other people. She wants all the attention. Um, but yeah, I think there's you can try certain elements, like you said with spider guard. There's a potential to kind of use that, and I know some people can effectively. I'm not one
Yeah.
of them. I can barely do it effectively in gi, let alone no gi. Um,
Oh yeah.
um, but yeah, I definitely see that. The other thing that's nice right now in the summer is that it's really hot, so it's nice
Yeah.
not to wear the gi.
Oh yeah. We used to do no gi for like the entire month of July because it was so hot. It was just like, all right, is no gi. That's just what we're doing. If you show up with a gi, you'd have messed up. So get ready to do no gi. And I always feel like, and this is just in the pocket of folks that I talk with kind of initially, it always feels like a lot of folks initially or instinctively lean towards no gi, but then once they get into the gi, that becomes, like, okay, I got the gi. But everyone that I've encountered, kind of started no gi,
Hmm.
I guess like younger wise, like in the newer,
Yeah.
because jiu-jitsu now, it seems like, you got a lot of 10th planet locations popping up all around. Then you got just schools that, focus a lot on MMA. So you're doing a lot of no gi stuff. I think the gym that I initially went to, I didn't sign up there, but I gone in and it was MMA heavy, and I gone to no gi classes with them. And I remember looking around and, I was like, maybe I do the gi. I'm not sure. I don't know anything about it. But,
Mhm.
in order to really learn, I feel like I got to get in that gi. And then I ended up going to another gym, which for I think the first 3 months I didn't have on a gi. And like everybody else had on a gi. I just couldn't afford one. And they were cool to let me train. And then one of the guys choked me with my shirt. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to get a gi because I think he's mad at me. Like, you know, choke me with my shirt, choke me with the gi. Like, get those lapels. Um, but it, like, having the option of, your grips with the gi, it's super comforting for sure. But it's
Yeah.
like with no gi, it feels more fluid.
Yeah, well, Nogi's definitely way more fast paced. It's like it's just so slippery all the time, particularly in
Yeah.
the heat. What I like about Nogi is also, or sorry, with gi is that um you can control the pace better. Like you can kind of like be more methodical, hold people in place. Like I have like zero fast twitch muscle groups at all. Like none. And I try and build them up, they're just not there. I'm not a fast person. So I like gi because it allows me to take me a little bit more time and to control people to kind of move through things, whereas like no gi, it's like it is very very fast paced, and like if I have someone like same weight, age, gender, all that stuff, it's fine. But if like you're dealing with someone a lot younger, a lot faster, it's definitely, it makes things more challenging, but still a lot of fun.
But it's definitely a lot of fun. Our Friday night no gi class, it's all young fellas and they're all wrestlers, and it is it's an experience for sure. And there's a young lady there. I don't even think she's a wrestler, but she's like, and I know in jiu-jitsu to say someone's strong is, kind of a backhanded compliment, but like it's not even just that she's strong, but it's like she's strong and like knows how to control it and control you. And it's like, dude, we don't even have no grips. Like, I'm not comfortable right here right now. And I get done with her, and then one of the 19-year-olds was like, all right, well, it ain't about to get no easier, buddy. But when you're going to no gi with that fast pace, it's like, one of two things. It's either have good cardio and good timing, or I'm a big boy. Like, if I could put that weight on you, like, I'll slow you down. You won't like it, but it's a little boring.
It's funny. So speaking about like different people or sizes and ages kind of facing each other. I posted something on Threads yesterday. In response, actually, Ramsey Dewey, who's like a well-known YouTuber, he responded to it, and I was like, "Hey, cool, noticed it." But what I said was like, people who don't believe semantics are important in jiu-jitsu have never seen the difference in 10% intensity between a 50-year-old woman and a 20-year-old man.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's interesting is that 10% intensity means very different things to different people, because what's 10% for someone in who's 20 years old, works out all the time, has been training quite a bit, is very different for a 50-year-old woman who's, potentially like a little bit overweight, hasn't really been active all her entire life, and, is doing jujitsu for the first time or being active for the first time. So it's interesting to reflect on that. And one of the things that Ramsey Dewey responded was that, it's important. He thinks like never use percentages as a way of explaining the intensity because people will always push it. He mentioned maybe like light contact or light rolling, but even then, I think that's up for interpretation. But he made a really good point about it's really important for instructors to very thoroughly define what the intensity is they're looking for, particularly I think in physical examples. So like showing, okay, this is what light rolling looks like. If we see you going all over the place, going really fast, that's more intense rolling. So defining that. But in response to that, it made me think a little bit further. It's like maybe we shouldn't be using like light or numbers to define intensity. But I started to think about cooking, and I was like, what if we started defining intensity in terms of like a steak? Like
Okay.
if your muscles are like a blue rare steak, that means you're going light. If your muscles are like really tight as you're rolling and they're like a charred piece of well done meat, maybe you're going too intense. And like use that as the standard for defining people's intensity when they're rolling or sparring. Being like, we're looking for light intensity, go for a light, medium rare roll.
Sure. I mean, across the board, we all know what, medium, medium rare, medium well. We all know what that is. So it makes sense. I like it. Uh, I do like in the gi, and just from my experience, I know there's some folks, they'll go with, like a white belt and say, okay, we're flow rolling. A white belt gets a little spazzy. They might punish them. They might, that, okay, you're gonna go, I'm gonna go. Like, I like in the gi, at least no gi, it's a little different because there's less control with grips, but in the gi it's like, okay, if we're gonna flow, we're going, you know a little slower, and as the, upper belt, you kind of lead by example. It's like you show this is what we're doing. If they start to kind of ramp up a little bit, that's where those lapels and sleeves come into play, where you can kind of slow them down, and then also kind of, show them like, hey, chill, B. like,
Yeah.
this is not what we're doing. And I can say, even for myself, I've done, some light rolls that kind of intensified on my own end, but I caught myself, eventually, and was like, okay. But by this point, the other person, they're like, nope, nope. We like, you made a decision. We're going 95. I'm like, I was just joking. I'm sorry. Like, let's bring that back to 40. But it is a good point that instructors, it is important to point that out and explain, what we mean by certain intensities, and just what's a flow roll versus, like if you're in a competition class, those are, Coliseum roles. Those are, battles for the most part, within, safety limits. But, if it's, one of your you know, mixed levels classes, you tend to have more white belts and, a few blue belts in there. It's like, okay, we got to explain to these folks what our, flow roles look like, because I, I was rolling with someone, I believe they were a blue belt, and they're like, I don't know what a flow roll. I've never flow rolled before. I was like,
Yeah.
you're about to learn today, son. And it was a pleasant experience. I mean, we went pretty lightly with each other. It was kind of catch and release with the submissions and stuff, and it was more so for them just to see, like, what you can get, where your body positioning is and everything, and just getting certain comforts. But it is tough if you don't know, and if you don't have anyone that's willing to work with you on it either. And that's not to say most people aren't. Most folks in our community, we're very helpful with each other. Sometimes you might get that one person that's like, nah, you picked the wrong
Yeah.
day.
Yeah, it's true. Well, I think also people, particularly new people, forget we're allowed to talk to each other. Um like even during the role, at some point, if you're like, I feel like we have different definitions of what was asked. Can we clarify this? Like, you
Yeah.
don't have to keep going when you're like, I'm in a really intense situation. I don't really like this. Things, I kind of feel like I'm a little bit injured from as a consequence of this. Maybe I should stop, communicate this with my partner, and then we can find an agreeable way of moving forwards. Because obviously, like we had different expectations in what was happening. And I think often people don't know, or they don't feel comfortable with saying something, which I think is important for probably instructors and upper belts as well, to either take the lead in that type of communication and reminding people as well, like if there's a point that um things aren't moving in a direction that you think are appropriate, then like just stop and be like, hey, can we slow it down a little bit? I don't feel great. Or if the person's like, hey, I wanted to work a little bit harder on this thing. Can you go a little bit, defend this a little bit harder when I try it and attack it, or vice versa? I think when people are working with partners, I think there needs to be more communication, as far as in order for everyone to grow.
No, I definitely agree. I it's funny thinking about communicating. It's almost like I have to be told, like, okay, Dante, you're only communicating to talk about the role. You're not mid roll talking about your weekend, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm a chatty Cathy. That's why I have a podcast. Yeah, like I'll be sitting there on the mat singing songs. People get like, I use it more as a distraction. I just like, look, if I'm in a bad spot, I'm gonna sing to you. I want you to feel uncomfortable and maybe let go. Sometimes I like choke them, like crush his voice box. Like, I don't care if it's not a blood choke anymore. But yeah, the communication part, it's very important, especially if you're drilling. Because I've had teammates. Well, I have one particular teammate, really nice guy. As we're drilling, we're going through the move. We're kind of adding a little bit of resistance to you don't want just a dead fish there flopping around when you're doing the move.
Yeah.
But this one teammate will then go like, there's like no middle ground for him. It's like full clip, or like,
I
you
had
know
someone like that too.
it's frustrating, but that's where the communication comes into play. It was like, hey, dial it down, just a touch. You don't need you to completely, what I'm about to do. So you don't need to completely shut it down, but put up some resistance. Just kind of let me know, like, hey, you're not just gonna get this knee cut. Whereas in the other
Yeah.
times they'll just lay there. It's like, that's
Yeah.
not how you defend the knee cut.
Yeah, that's again, that's another thing that I think, particularly, even some mid-level belts, I think sometimes forget, is that intent is so important for things to be executed properly. Because I know I've had moments where I'm like, I'm trying to do a technique and it's not working. And then I'm realizing, why isn't it working? Why isn't it? And then I realize my partner isn't giving me the correct feedback in order to execute it. So, as a simple example, it's like if you have someone trying to punch you in the face, but they keep missing to be nice. And then you're like, why am I? And I'm trying to go do my block, but I can't successfully do it because they're not aiming where they need to be aiming. So it's like you see that in jiu-jitsu too, whether they're the dead fish and you're like, I want to, you know, maybe do a throw, which if they're a bigger person, if they're a dead fish and I have no momentum, I'm not throwing them, because if you're a smaller person against a bigger person, you have to have momentum going in order for you to be able to throw them successfully, assuming, under, depending on your strength and how large they are. So it's one of those things that, yeah, it's like communication is so important, highlighting, okay, I need you to provide me with this intent or feedback so that I'm able to execute my technique, because it's 100% dependent on that.
Yeah, I will just call myself out now, because I'm that person during Muay Thai who, as I'm throwing punches, I'm like, oh man, I don't want to hit this guy. So, I'm throwing it like not far away from him, but not where I should be hitting him. Where like Coach last week was like, no, it's his job to dodge. So you throw that jab.
Yeah.
If he's there, that's his fault. And then vice versa, when he's throwing his jab, the guy kept hitting me, because whatever we're doing, he wasn't supposed to hit me. And it was more like kind of, setting up. So he kept telling me, I didn't understand. He was saying Dante needs to put his hand up. And I'm thinking about me throwing my jab, and it's like, huh? It's like, no, you need to put your hand up and block your face. Like, stop letting him hit you. I was like, okay. Like, I'm new to striking arts. So like, look, if this were grappling, I would have known what we are doing. Like, it's weird that everybody, before, you take a martial arts class or any kind of like self-defense, anything where you're throwing punches or fighting or simulating fighting, everyone thinks they know how to fight. and until you get in there, you start throwing those punches, and those punches look goofy as hell. And it's like, what the hell is he doing? And then you realize, ooh, if I was in there with a real fighter, I'd get my ass whipped. Never mind.
Yeah, I think for a lot of BJJ places, like I know they try to teach addressing striking, but unless they have a coach who has experience with striking, generally it's not very good in terms of what they're showing. One, they're trying to teach defenses to punches when people don't know how to punch, which I suppose is realistic, because most people who attack you probably won't know how to punch either. But at the same time, I think it's better to know how to defend something that's coming at you that's optimal, and then learning how to address that, because anything less than that will be easier. So I wish that more jiu-jitsu places integrated more striking, even on a basic level, like how to just throw a straight punch or a hook or whatever, and learn that, so that when they are actually practicing the defenses and integrating the grappling strategies, they know how to address like a real punch that's going to be coming, that's optimal. And then, if they have to deal with something that's not optimal, it's going to be so much more easier.
Well, I also like the idea too of, when you're in there and you're learning, and not even just, in the training environment, but like watching MMA fights, period. It's like, it's not like the movies,
No, it's not.
It's like everybody has that knockout punch. Everybody does. It's like, it doesn't work that way. Because again, like you said, most people don't know how to throw a punch, like I was throwing a hook the other day, and coach is like, okay, here, you got your elbows low, bring that up. And I was like, oh wow, like what would I have hit it? If I was throwing it, like, well, I mean, you would have maybe connected, but if the person knew anything on the other end, you would have got knocked out. So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, like, thanks for the info.
Yeah,
Now, now
yeah.
I know.
Striking, it's definitely a different world. But there's definitely similar. The mechanics of everything is pretty much the same, right? How you understand momentum and things like that. When I've been doing more grappling over the last couple of months than I have been striking, but I have the karate background, did Krav Maga and boxing and kickboxing, and coming from a karate background, our strategies are very we're orienting ourselves for more domestic self-defense situations where it's like there's a physical encounter where strikes are going to be an element, but not to the same sophistication as you might see in like a boxing match or a Muay Thai match, right? It's generally a little bit more sloppier because you're going to be dealing with people we're expecting to deal with people on the streets. And this is how karate was developed. It was, people in bars and, stuff like that. And as just a basic form of domestic self-defense. So with our striking strategies, there's an element of like pulling people down and then punching them, and then you get out of there. It's not like a long drawn out scenario. So when I started to get more involved with kickboxing and boxing, it was really exciting because I didn't recognize the nuances to the angles and footwork that are involved in it. It's actually it's really beautiful when you kind of look at it. There's an elegance to the ability to just like move your head off just like a little bit, and then you feel the fist slide back past your face. Um, and I really love that feeling. One of my main things I wanted to learn when I started to get involved in boxing was specifically like bobbing and weaving. Like I really love the Mike Tyson peekaboo style of fighting. Um and like I want to get good at that, and I love it when you just get off center and then it just
Yeah.
gets wide, and I was like, oh yeah, I like the feeling of it just scratching by my cheek or feeling it just go above my hair. That's how I knew I had the right I was ducking down the right amount because I could feel it go over my hair a little bit if I was getting a hook or whatever.
Yeah, that's one of the things last week that we were working on was kind of disrupting the jab,
Mm,
and as you slip, it's just a small movement. And for me, because like this is only like the third class that I've been in, it's me trying to get comfortable with the idea of not over exaggerating that slip.
right,
It's like
right.
it's just a tiny movement, but for me, I'm like, oh, shit, I want to get hit. Like I got to get all the way out the way of that glove. But but that also then kind of later on leads to the ideal as I'm throwing my jab and he's trying to disrupt my jab by slipping and then kind of jabbing me back.
Yeah.
You know, I'm getting hit. Like he just hit me each time in the face, and then coach was like, Dante, you need to put your hand up. It's like, what? Like, no, I'm just doing one job here. I'm just doing this. But I like the idea, like you said, like just kind of that small movement. And it's like it seems like, from the outside eye, it seems like, oh, I mean, that's not a whole lot at all. But, from the knowing eye, it's like, oh no, that's a lot of space. That's all you need. Because I mean, yeah, keep your head off the center line. I mean, that's all you're looking for. It ain't got to be a whole hell of a lot. But you leave that to somebody in the bar who don't know anything, you know, they're looking to throw these big looping punches. It's like, oh,
Oh
geez,
yeah.
Louise.
Yeah,
Like,
big windups. Big windups.
As they're loading up, you can go grab another drink before that punch even, starts going. Um,
That's it.
but, but yeah, I think collectively, when you look at, any of the martial arts, it's like they all have, this art to them, obviously because of martial arts, but there's always this magic to each of them in their own pocket. But then, when you kind of combine them, in MMA, mixed martial arts, you know, it then becomes a game of the combinations and kind of pocketing it together, whether it be, because I was listening to something, it might have been Joe Rogan, I'm not sure whose podcast, but I feel like that's where it was. Yeah, because Rampage Jackson on, and they were talking about like Taekwondo not working. Well, Rampage was saying, well, Taekwondo doesn't work in MMA, and it's like, well, I mean, Anthony Pettis, he had Taekwondo in his background. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson has karate. Michael Venom Page. Everybody has like an initial background that they are super fluid in, but then you throw in the other elements, and you may not be a full blown like expert.
Yeah.
But enough to like kind of combine it with what you have, and that's how you become an elite fighter, an elite striker, an elite grappler, or whatever it may be, a good hybrid of all of it. Because you have your GSPs that this guy, he was just collecting martial arts like they're Pokemon.
Yeah.
Like, dude, stop. Like, save some for the others.
Yeah, totally. Well, the thing is like, I think sometimes people scrutinize like Taekwondo for it kind of got a bad name for itself, because it's like people get a black belt in 2 years. And a lot, like if you look at it, a lot of Taekwondo styles are kind of like stripped down karate. It's more simplified. Again, not necessarily anything wrong with it, as like if you're someone who wants to get in shape, want to get involved in a new sport, flexibility, it's amazing for all of those things. And there are a lot of Taekwondo schools who do focus on self-defense skills, who do look at grappling, who do look at throws and all these things as well. So I wouldn't initially just put everything under the same label and be like, okay, it sucks. Because there's a lot, like you said, there's a lot of great examples of people who started in those styles and ended up being very, very successful in martial arts overall and MMA in competitions. Because it does lay a very good foundation of base skill levels that you need to be successful in all martial arts. Like, for whether it's Taekwondo or karate, if you just look at, base level kumite type stuff, great understanding of distance, where the punches are going to be, basic blocking, good understanding of footwork, how to land your foot in a good position for kicks, particularly for Taekwondo. So if you look at like Joe Rogan, like he went from Taekwondo to kickboxing, and he has one of the best spinning back kicks ever. And that's like a testament to the people he was originally training with. You don't just get those skills overnight. No. So yeah, I think people are often presumptuous because people won't know what they don't know. And it's easy to point a finger and be like, okay, they suck and what I do is better. And, maybe it is for what you're doing and what your goals are, but there's no one size fits all.
Definitely not. And to, quote one of my coaches when we talked about, what sport is the hardest sports, it's also kind of, this plays into also martial arts as well. It's like, if you're saying my thing is better than yours or tougher than yours, check your ego. Everybody, all of it's difficult.
Yes.
Like for me to say, oh, I do jiu-jitsu, I'm, let me slow down. I was going to say I'm really good at jiu-jitsu. False. I'm decent at jiu-jitsu, or I'm good at jiu-jitsu. It's like, and my jiu-jitsu is better than your taekwondo. It's like, well, your taekwondo, you know, if you take your taekwondo against my taekwondo, yeah, you're way better. My jiu-jitsu against your jiu-jitsu, you don't have any. I'm way better. So it's like, now to put me over there and have me try to learn taekwondo, it's going to be hard. Like it's going, because I'm now having to learn all these new systems. But there is a benefit, from one martial art to the other, is understanding that you are a white belt, you are a beginner, and for the first time stepping into any kind of sports, and being a beginner, and you don't understand that in the beginning. Once you've now been the beginner or the white belt, and then you go somewhere else, you can come in already kind of laser focused and understand, like, I need to work on these things as a beginner to get to the next spot. Whereas, like, if you don't have that knowledge, like if I take one of my friends who's never done anything before and say, hey, come do some jiu-jitsu, like, that's going to be super difficult for them in the sense of understanding, where to be, what to do, how to do things. Whereas, I take a friend who might be a black belt in karate and like, all right, come, try out jiu-jitsu. Yeah, they're still having to learn a new system, but they do understand, okay, be patient, take it slow, and pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
And that you would think that would be for anyone, but sometimes you get folks, they just come in and it's like, well, no, I know how to wrestle. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
so one of the things that I thought about is that, like, a good coach protects your body but destroys your ego. So they protect you as a human being, but they destroy your ego, because that's what's going to let you learn.
True. Now, all those things my grandfather said make so much more sense now. He was not a coach, but he said some brutal things. I was like, the hell are you talking about? And now I'm in my 40s, like, that shit makes sense now. I get it. Like, he was preparing me. Um, but yeah, I think, you know, it's unfair to talk down on any martial arts. And I know I post some memes that might take digs at other, but I poke fun at jiu-jitsu too. Like, I
Yeah, you
poke
can
more
poke
fun at jiu-jitsu.
fun at any and all martial arts, because they all have their quirks, some of them have culty elements, right?
Mm.
um and little nuances to them. Like in karate, we kind of see, like, there's kind of a karate arrogance sometimes, because they think, well, we practice applications for our kata, therefore we know what we're doing when it comes to groundwork, or we know what we're doing when it comes to throws, which isn't necessarily the case. It's you definitely don't, they're not going to know the same thing that a BJJ person knows about groundwork. They're not going to know what a judo person knows about throws. They're not going to know what wrestlers know about controlling the body, unless they've actually gone out and practiced each of those things. And it's great that they implement them into their practices, into some of their training, but generally they're not going to get that same specialization that you see by going to those martial arts directly. So that's like an example of, like, one of the little things about karate, and I think sometimes that happens in taekwondo too. And then I know there's lots of wrestlers who think, well, I know how to wrestle, I don't need to learn how to strike, or I should be a blue belt in BJJ because I've wrestled, even though they don't know how to do a triangle or base level submissions. Um, and then same thing with, like, some BJJ practitioners. They're like, I'll be able to pick up striking. And some of them do. Some of them do. Some people are exceptional athletes and can pick anything up like that. But I do think when people know one martial art, there is sometimes this arrogance thinking that, and it's a fallacy, that because I know how to do one thing, I will automatically be good at this other thing. which is not true.
Humans are complicated that way. So,
Yes.
yeah, they, I think about, like you said with the wrestlers, though, it's like just going to high school and just, the guys on the wrestling team. That was always the thing. It's like not that they're going around looking for fights or picking fights or anything, but there's always this ideal of like, oh, the wrestlers, they're gonna, they'll beat your ass, and yes, they'll definitely, you know, slam you and control you, and there's nothing you can do. I've seen a couple wrestlers, I went to school with, try to stand up and throw hands with folks, and it's like, okay, well, I mean, they still have the advantage because if they start getting,
Close enough, they can
it's like, all
handle
right,
it.
it's like, all right, let me just take this dude to the ground. Like, I don't
Yeah.
want to stand up with him anymore. But it's always important just to know, again, your limitations. Again, if you are a grappler and you go to a striking class, put those listening ears on and be coachable. Because if you're not, if you come in thinking, oh, well, I'm a really good, grappler. Yeah, I'm going to pick striking up pretty easy. And let me tell you, I didn't. I'm not. I'm struggling. Well, I'm not struggling. I mean, I've only been to three Muay Thai classes. Um, so it's not like I'm out here like, oh my God, I've been doing this for like 6 months and I still can't figure it out. Been doing it for 3 weeks and I'm like, okay. Like I see it, uh, you know, I'm looking at videos,
Yeah.
I'm learning, I'm watching the fights and, you know, being more in tune with like the striking versus, okay, all right, they got them up against the cage, just, okay, you could hook them. Okay, they're on the ground now. Now I'm looking more for like, oh no, keep them up. I want to see, the, see them on the feet, see what they got going. But uh, yeah, it's just important to not walk in with the ego thinking I'm going to come in here and just walk through this as well. And because I feel like, and just using the, jujitsu as the example, because that's me. Um, jujitsu isn't easy. So it's like, it'd be
God,
weird
no.
to walk into something else and think that's going to be easy. Like, they're all hard on their own levels.
Yeah. Yeah. It's 100% true.
But hey, if even like you said, there are really, really good athletes, so that for whatever reason they could pick up anything, they just walk in and they
The
get it.
bastards.
Yeah, it's
Just
like
walking in.
I used to be that kid, and then but then I started doing martial arts, and it was like, oh, maybe like any sport that I played growing up, I was just good at it. Then I started doing martial arts, and I was like, okay, not that I was bad. It's just like it wasn't refined. It's like grappling is like, okay, I moved well. I was in my mid-30s when I started, so I still had energy. He was like, okay, yeah, this guy can get some scrambles, and this looks good. But the day I turned 40, because I train on my birthday every year, the day I turned 40, it just something. There was a switch that hit, and I was like, damn, dude, I'm a dad now. I'm 40. My hip feels funny. I don't even think I could turn my neck to the left anymore. It's like, dude, it's only been one day. Like, chill. But
It was all building up to that. Yeah, it's like it's you see some of the kids in jiu-jitsu now and they're like insanely good because it's like they go to school and then they just eat, drink, sleep, jiu-jitsu. Like that's all they want to do all the time. And I wish I had the and with that said, when I was like in high school, like I was did the same thing for wrestling and karate. Like I was constantly training, overtraining even. Um and but when you get to late 20s 30s into your 40s etc however old it's like we actually have responsibilities like these kids now even in their early 20s mom's still doing their laundry making dinner and all they have to do is do whatever they do during the day whether it's school part-time job and then they go train all the time so
yeah, that's seeing kids today getting into jiu-jitsu or martial arts period. It is fascinating because like I was talking about it a while back when I started training, the things that I was learning, like these basic moves like here, side control, learn what a rear naked choke is, learn what the Americana, simple stuff. And I see kids coming in now, they just kind of jump right in. It's like whatever they're learning that day, hey, you have to pick it up. Oh, you learn Kiss of the Dragon? All right. Looks like that's the first thing you're learning today. Like, but I don't know what that is. Well, we'll figure it out. I mean, that's not to say they just kind of immerse them into it. You still kind of work on some of the smaller stuff to kind of get you there. But the point is, like, they're still seeing this stuff early on. I didn't see, Inverted and Kiss of the Dragon and the Matrix until I don't know how many years in. It was like, oh, it's like y'all was hiding stuff from me. Like these kids walk in, they're like, here's the secrets for me. They're like, you can't let him know that stuff yet. You know what he will do to his own kid.
Well, that's the other thing now is that like UFC and MMA has been around as long as some of these kids have been alive. And they have, just by watching the UFC, they know what a rear naked choke is. They know the key elements and structure of it. They know what an arm bar is just by watching. And a lot of kids are very good at like visually seeing something and being able to pick it up. So I think sometimes there's an advantage nowadays that if you were to compare them to even like karate in the 70s, if there was like a karate school, the only time they've seen anything martial arts oriented was through Bruce Lee movies. But now it's like it's kind of ingrained that the martial arts is ingrained in our culture, which is actually a very interesting time to live. I feel like right now Brazilian jiu-jitsu is now what CrossFit was like 10 years ago. I feel like everyone was like CrossFit, everybody's doing CrossFit. Now everybody is doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu. It's really interesting. And I don't know if this is maybe a consequence of, COVID, where people were like, I don't want to work out by myself anymore. I want to be in like physical contact with other people, have it be like more socially dynamic, that it's like people kind of have started to seek it out more so than kind of something that's a little bit more independent.
Sure. Yeah, I think what comes with it too is I think just awareness. You just a lot of times people say, oh, the world is so dangerous now, and that I think the world's still pretty safe. It's safer than it was
if you
40 years
compare
ago.
it to like
Yeah. I mean, there's some rough things going on, but I mean, in comparison, we're okay. But I think there's still this ideal though of like you want to be prepared. So, there's this idea of like, okay, well, what can I do? You can lift all the weights you want. You get as strong as you want, but if you don't know how to at least defend yourself, so I think some of that leads into it, and also just overall fitness and working out. You see a lot of celebrities doing jiu-jitsu now. I mean, everyone that was in the Justice League, the
yeah.
well, except for Ben Affleck, he was like, "Fuck you guys, give me a cigarette." But like everyone from the Justice League was doing jiu-jitsu, and whether that, like you said, like 10 years ago, everybody was doing CrossFit, now it's jiu-jitsu. I don't know if it's a matter of like, this is a trend that everybody's hopping on and it'll be gone. Hopefully, not. Or if it's a matter of, people are legitimately into it. I mean, you see Tom Hardy, he goes out there and competes. Like WWE wrestlers,
I know.
they're doing a
Batista.
lot of
Batista
it.
is like a brown belt or something.
Yeah. I think Dean Ambrose has been doing local competitions. He's been getting submitted, but he's still going out there and doing local competitions. You see a lot of wrestlers using jiu-jitsu moves as their finishers,
Yeah.
stuff like that. And it's like, oh, okay. So you're starting to see it more and more. And, I feel like you said, MMA, UFC specifically being out there it's readily available now. It used to only be on Spike TV. If it wasn't even on there for a while. Once you got to Spike TV, it's like, okay, some people see it. Then they got the Fox. Some more people
Yeah.
saw it. Now it's on ESPN every weekend. So there's that exposure, but I think that leads more into the ideal of people going to a gym and training MMA, like just going into that. Whereas the whole thing with jiu-jitsu, what's leading people there, and maybe it's because they're going to the MMA gym and they're being steered towards jiu-jitsu first.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, okay, here's this option. And then we also have boxing over here, Muay Thai, kickboxing, and wrestling. But here's jiu-jitsu, and that's our base. So, but I do think that the world that we're in, I feel like a lot of folks are like, look, I want to be able to, if something goes down, I want to also be able to at least, protect myself. Because I have friends who, when they think about jiu-jitsu and defending yourself with jiu-jitsu, they're thinking, oh, well, you're going to pull guard in a fight. It's like, well, no. I mean, just knowing body like positioning and
Mm-hmm.
like knowing like, okay, if someone gets out of control in a public setting, you don't have to fight the person. I mean, even just being able to like kind of hold them and contain them in a safe way.
Yeah.
That's your
Did you
jiu-jitsu
see
working.
that? I think Renner Gracie, they introduced that new hold, which was originally meant for like, they did it for, designed it for medical professionals, but now they're working with the New York, I think it's New York State Police to, as a way of apprehending assailants in a safe way. Because there was I can't remember the gentleman's name, but someone died as a consequence of a police interaction. I think because he from asphyxiation, and so the Gracies have designed this unique form of holding down a person where they can talk to them, hold them down, but in a way that's safe for both the police and the person being um what's the word I'm looking for? Apprehended.
Yeah, so I actually did come across it, like as you mentioned. I'm like, huh, what are you talking about? Like, I don't think I've heard this. Then as I go to his page, like, oh wait a minute, I did see this. Like, it's weird. All the content that I see, and it's just like it's there. It's
Yeah.
lodged somewhere. It's just like, oh, I have to be reminded. As I'm looking, it's like, oh, I used to do that with my cousins all the time. Like, that ain't new. That's me and my cousins in the backyard when they start acting up. It's like, hey, chill, son. But but yeah, those things are important. So important, because it's
Yeah.
like, when in 2020, when all the chaos of the world was going on, um and there was an outcry for police to learn jiu-jitsu. I've never
Yes.
seen so many people, you know not so many, but there are a handful of people saying, oh great, teach the killers now more ways to kill people. It's like, well, I think when you're teaching someone proper, techniques, it gives them confidence to not have to freak out. You know,
Yeah, absolutely.
uh,
I think and again, I'm not from the United States. Like there's not a lot of the situations that I observe, like the gentleman who was killed during a police encounter. It doesn't happen a lot that I know of in Canada, but I do understand and empathize from the law enforcement perspective. They're put in extremely difficult
yeah,
situations that are not easy to navigate and are extremely scary. That's why not everyone goes into law enforcement. This is why not everybody goes into the army, because it's a scary job. And so I think it's when they do think that their life could be at risk, there is an increased chance, particularly if they don't have the tools available to them to feel as safe as possible, that they are going to react in an extreme way, which I think is in a lot of ways is a normal reaction.
Sure, sure. One of my buddies, he's been on here several times, police officer here in Maryland, and we've talked about it, and he shared a story. I can't remember. It might have been the first time he was on. He shared a story when he was, doing a routine stop, and it could have been lights out for him. He was very fortunate in a situation, and at no point did he draw his weapon. Very, very fortunate, that he didn't have to. But I mean, there are other situations though, like again, as a police officer, as a military personnel, these are jobs that are very difficult, and split second reactions,
Yeah.
are needed in many situations. Unfortunately, there have been some situations where, a split second reaction has taken place in a situation that wasn't necessarily detrimental. It was like, hey, maybe you didn't need to there. But then there are other situations though where, you don't know. It's like
Yeah.
we see it from the outside where we're looking at a video with our heart rates at whatever it is, 65 or whatever, and we're chilling. Whereas they're in a situation where their heart rates are like 170, and this is the difference between them getting home to their family and not. But that's in one scenario, when it comes to weapons and whatnot. But in a scenario where you're tussling with somebody, like there's the unfortunate videos of like out of shape officers who are just getting made to look silly because they're so out of shape. And then there it's just then it becomes this laughing stock thing, and it's like, oh, man, that's not okay. Tom DeBlas, he puts up videos of these officers who is like, look, man, y'all got to do better.
Yeah.
And then he'll put up the videos of the officers who are doing better, who are taking the time out to go train and taking the time to try to de-escalate a situation without it get into a dangerous matter. It's just
yeah, for sure.
It's tough.
I think because I think it's Jordan Peterson. He talks about how those who are capable of violence, so like people who are martial artists or in the military, they can sometimes be, and in most cases, they are extremely calm and friendly people because they know they have the capacity for violence and they're, well versed in it. They are less likely to engage in it because they understand it. And so I think that's, again, why it's so important for people in law enforcement to be involved in martial arts, both having an understanding of grappling through jiu-jitsu and striking, and understanding, okay, if there is a physical encounter, I don't need my gun because I already have the tools I need within whatever martial arts system I'm using in order to apprehend them and control them in a safe way. And then also, I think it's important, like you said, I think you mentioned something about de-escalating. The other thing we need to remember is that, police officers are not psychologists. And I think sometimes there's cases where they're thrown into situations with people who are mentally ill. And sometimes you can't de-escalate with them. There are situations where you can, but, again, giving them the training and the tools to understand how to do that without immediately resorting to an aggressive tactic.
Yeah. I mean, it's a varied bag because, like you said, they could be in a situation where they're not psychologists. They could be in a situation where it may need to be de-escalated, but they may not be able to, like, effectively, like talking it down.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, considering the situation, it could be something that's super high tense. So I mean, when you got two people arguing, two people yelling, or a lot of like screaming going on, it's very difficult to remain calm.
Mhm.
Some folks can do it. Some struggle with it. I mean, you just don't know. It's it's interesting just to kind of think about it, because as you move forward with anything, the question becomes, how do you roll this out? How do you fix this? How do you help more? And you know, my one buddy who is officer here in Maryland, I have another buddy who's been on a couple times, officer in Delaware. We both times talk separately to them, and when I there was like, as you have new officers coming in, they have to go through the training. Officers that are already there, it's like, look, we would like for you to do it. We're not gonna, we're not gonna require you to do it. We're not gonna make, you're not gonna lose your job for not doing it. But we highly recommend you do it. Anybody that comes in after, you
Mhm.
have to do it. Like, because what's done is done.
Yeah.
All we can do is look to, make things better for the future. So, it's wild how our conversation just kind of went in all these different directions. And now we're talking about law enforcement. Like, Jen, we're about to fix law enforcement in the world. We're about to make all the MMA fighters fear and respect jiu-jitsu again. We're about to conquer the world with this one episode. We got it under
Wouldn't
control.
it be that simple? Nice for it to be that simple.
All we need is just a voice. Like, reach out to Joe Rogan. Like, everybody listens to him. Like,
It's true.
even when people say they don't want to, I was like, I don't want to listen to him anymore.
Yeah, they'll still
What's that I
listen to
hear?
you.
I mean, I've had my moments where I was like, I think I'm done for now. I'm done for now. But I'll see a certain guest. I was like, oh my God, I want to hear them though.
Yeah, I
Like,
know. He does. He has great conversations with people. That's for sure.
yeah, it's like, an audiobook. Just turn. I actually, a guest that he just had on recently, Annie Jacobson. I was reading her book, Nuclear War, and when I saw she was going to be on, I was like, "Oh my God, I've got to listen to this episode," because I'm doing an audiobook of her book right now, and she read her book and then listened to her on Joe Rogan. Every time I turned on, I was like, I don't know if I'm listening to the book right now
Oh,
or her talking to Joe. So let me give it a few minutes. I'll hear him say something like, okay, it's the podcast. Whew, okay, I was confused because like I got a lot going on here. But yeah, back to our regularly scheduled.
but yeah, it's like going back to talking about, um, I think it's true that people who do martial arts, particularly for quite a bit of time, have a tendency to just be like generally more chill people, because I think they get all of their aggression out
Yeah.
and there. Also, because, and I say this at work all the time, it's like I'm used to having like people bigger than me try and strangle me and punch me. So when I go into my normal job, which is like a pretty much a desk job, is like everything that happens there is not scary. It's like there's nothing really to be, there's no emergency really to be worried about because I'm not getting punched in the face. No one's trying to break my arm. This is like a very chill environment.
Yeah. At my job, I work with individuals with intellectual disabilities.
Mm.
And the group that I work with, well, I work with one individual who he's a strict 1-to-1, but then they gave him a group. So now I have he and one other, and it gets interesting at times. But I remember, I want to say the third week that I was working with him, he got really upset over a situation. Very, very upset, where I thought he was ready to throw hands with me. And I got concerned, not for my safety. It was like, I'm thinking, how am I going to detain him?
Right.
But first, not even the idea of detain him. Like, how am I going to de-escalate this? How am I going to talk him down? Fortunately, the young lady at the bowling alley was very aware of something that kind of cleared it all up.
Mm.
And I had taken him to the side initially, calmed him down just a bit. He was still fired up. because he was still cracking his knuckles and banging his fist.
Mm.
But that was toned down drastically. And then when we got back into like the open area, she pointed something out, and then um I showed him, and it all kind of came back down. But you know, in thinking about like work and physical, altercations, it's like that's rare
Yeah.
for me, at least in my situation there. I've heard of some other scenarios at our main center. And there was an individual that I actually had to drive home one time, and one of the staff members explained to me, she was like, I mean, he's all fine and everything for the drive home, except for last time I drove him home, he punched me.
Mm.
So now I'm sitting here thinking like,
Gotta watch out
man,
for those fisticuffs.
yeah, I'm sitting there like driving with my hand up, like ready to like go up to like block. I've not had a situation with him and like anything of that sort. He does get a little like bouncy and loud, and I'm always like on edge, like, ooh, is this the moment? But I remember during one of our trainings, they were talking about situations where if someone grabs you, if one of the individuals grab you and do these things, as they're showing me this stuff, I'm like, I don't. It's not. Maybe you all, I don't know, like maybe you all know from like experience with one individual versus the other, but the guy that I have every day, if he grabs onto you the way that they were showing during that training, you're not getting your arm back with just like a simple like like pull it back. It was like you don't have to
Yeah.
do kind of a wrist roll, and there's gonna be more to it. They did mention after that training, talk about if you want to also assist with training, at some point let us know. So I'm like, well, I mean, at least a couple different things, because like you guys are just saying like here, but like if they grab onto your shirt, just pull away. It's like I don't think it's that. So if they grab onto your shirt, that thin material.
It's
I've had my
really hard to get someone to let
yeah.
go of clothing, I gotta
Yeah, it's
say.
like, and I mean, to do it safely with them though, it's like, it's a fine line. I'm like, I mean, I guess if you guys are saying, you know, just do this, but I just feel like just simply pulling your shirt, they're, if they got a good grip, it's like you got to do a little bit more. Maybe, maybe just kind of, like your lapel break, that grip break.
Yeah.
Get their
Yeah.
hand, push them back and pull yourself back. At least a little bit of that. My wife explained when she was in high school, there was a young lady in one of her science classes or something that sat behind her, would always like grab her ponytail, not to be mean or anything. She just liked my wife's hair.
Mm.
And it's like, okay, now imagine you're in a situation there. Like, what
Yeah.
do you do there? They're like, well, you have to do this. It's like, I don't think it's gonna work that way.
Mm.
We're gonna have to like I'm gonna have to sign up and like here, let's look at some of these other alternatives that they're non-lethal. They're not gonna hurt anyone. I don't think anyone there knows that I train except for one person. Anytime I walk in, she always makes some joke, and I'm like, girl, be quiet. Don't get me jumped out here in these streets.
But top secret.
It's like I'm just trying to come in and do my job and go out to the bowling alley in the mall. Like you out here talking about I'm a living weapon. No, I'm not. I'm just a dude from Maryland that's chilling. Like, and hopefully I can get home on time. But it's I always feel like having not just jiu-jitsu, but any kind of martial arts, training background, anything, just on a physical aspect of like health and fitness is super important too. In some capacity, whether it be, balance, improving your balance,
Yeah.
improving your movements for whatever it may be. It's important. And I try to stress that to friends all the time. It's like, I also just want my friends who don't train to come in and train. I want us to have
Yeah.
more in common.
Good.
Like,
Convert them.
I've been
One of
trying.
us. One of us.
Like, I have one buddy. I talk with him all the time, and he there's one excuse after the other why he doesn't want to come in. I'm like, okay, whatever. It's fine. It's fine. Like one day we'll get you. I think I might just set up a really weird scenario, like get him jumped one day.
Kidnap him.
It's like, now if you know in jiu-jitsu that you wouldn't have had any issue. It's like years later he finds out I was behind it the whole time. Like, that might ruin our friendship. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, I mean, we're kind of friends where we do weird shit like that to each other. We prank each other, but I think that might be a little far. Like, kidnap him, throw him in the trunk of the car, drive him 3 towns over.
Dress him
It's
into a
like,
gi. You're like, tie him up with a belt.
it's like,
Coming
what
with
the hell
me.
is, like, what is this? Like you're in the dojo. Like, huh? That these are the reasons why I'm up late at night, because this is the kind of shit I think about. Like with my friends, like, if I kidnap him though, he definitely has to train, right? Like, no, no. If you kidnap your friend, they won't be your friends anymore. Um, Wise words from my grandma. She's told me that once too. Don't kidnap your friends. It's like, should never need to be said. Um, Here's one thing I wanted to talk to you about as well, as we've been all over in the martial arts conversation here, which I love. It's is one of your blogs that you had talking about um, fake martial arts and basically McDojos, essentially. In I wonder, like, I guess Rob over at McDojo Life, he still pops up on those videos every so often, finding these spots. But that sort of thing was like, are those really still like a thing? But I guess it doesn't even have to be something as silly as like like the death touch, as the secret move, as much as it's like reading through the blog. Sometimes you just have coaches who kind of BS people, and I was like, wow, that is a thing. Like,
Yeah, for sure. It's a little bit more. I think, if you look at, like, obviously McDojo Life has his set guidelines of what he classifies as a McDojo. Obviously lying and bullshitting people is like one of those ones too. And I think it's relatively it's more insidious in martial arts than people think. I think everyone always thinks, oh, no touch knockouts, or they'll even say like, oh, this person's doing taekwondo, but they're not very good, so that's like qualifies, but not necessarily. Um, it's there's certain things that happen within a martial arts school, like saying, hey, you're training with us here, you can't train anywhere else, you can only train here, which is something that happens. I know I've experienced that myself, where people have said, you can only train with me, and if you train with this other person, then I don't want you associated, or there's some type of consequence, or even in some instances I've seen like a slander campaign for someone who leaves an organization or a club or school, which is extremely inappropriate and manipulative, which is of course inappropriate. And you do see cult like mentalities, like you can only wear this one gi. You can only wear this one gi that we have dictated as the school's gi or whatever. And then it's mandatory. You can't wear anything else. In a sense, I do understand. Okay, you want people wearing your logo. It's like you would have that in any sport. If there's a basketball team, you have to wear the uniform. Okay, I get it. But when it's so specific to the point, like let's say it's $200, someone might not be able to afford that. Then they have to stay in the one gi, and it gets old, it gets stinky. It's not necessarily the best thing. I would rather have someone wear a completely different clean gi than the same one over and over again because it's mandatory and they can't afford another one. That's a kind of like my main concern. I do think sometimes it's kind of insidious. Even I'm trying to think about other examples, but and then I think one of the things we're seeing with well, it's not just jujitsu. I think there's cases where you'll see like dating, and like sometimes there's a higher belt or even a black belt, and then they kind of use it as their school or their club as a dating pool. I think there's nothing wrong with someone dating, going out on a date with a student. They really like them. They have a relationship outside of the dojo. Maybe they work at the same place, go to the same school. Like if you're doing the same things that you enjoy, that happens. That happened with me and my husband. We met through karate. We also went to school together at university and worked together at the karate camp. So there was already an additional relationship outside of there, and he's the only person I've ever dated. And yeah, and like we've everything was obviously successful from that, but not everyone has that. So I do think like people, if people do date within a martial arts school, it's not necessarily culty or McDojo like. It's only that way if it's like a routine thing, a revolving door of dating people in which it becomes inappropriate.
Yeah. Well, and that's, as you're saying, I was like, yeah, I feel like, yeah, if it's like that's your dating pool, like you only date, students that come through. All right, got a new white belt. Let's go ahead and train this one up. All right, like you're the Leonardo DiCaprio of the martial art world.
Yeah.
Like, I'm only dating white belts. It's like get them the blue belt and let them loose. It's like, wow. Like I don't know, but yeah, like I was thinking about the uniform thing. It's like at our gym we used to just wear whatever, and then a few years back we switched, like everybody has to wear white, which I was just talking to a friend yesterday who wanted to come over and train with us this weekend, and he reached out to the gym and was like, "Oh, I can't wear my black gi." And I was like, "Yeah, we only wear white gis." And he was like, "Yeah, I was training at another gym that I don't want to slander or anything and throw their name in the there." He's like, "I was training at another gym and we had to wear their uniforms, and that's why I left there." I was like, I mean, yeah, at least here, like, yes, we have to wear white, but you don't have to wear their white gi. Like you can get a white gi from anywhere. Like I think when we switched over to the white gis, I was on Facebook. I'm not even sure. Like there was a Maeda gi. It was $60, and I was like, let me get this A3 because I know I'm going to shrink it. So it didn't shrink. It never shrunk. I was like, oh man, now I got to get fat and like grow into this gi
I
now.
hate it when that happens. Like some gis, it's like you never know whether or not it's going to shrink or not. And then sometimes it says it's not going to shrink, and then it shrinks. Sometimes it says it will shrink, it doesn't shrink, and it's very frustrating.
Yes. Yeah. And like I tried everything to shrink that gi. It just wouldn't work. And then I went back trying to find out where I bought the gi. Maybe I can get an A2. Site didn't exist anymore. It was just gone. I was like, oh, okay. But I mean, the point is like, I found comfort in that, where it's like, hey, you don't have to get our gi. Like, their gi was like 150. I was like, I ain't got it. Or no, it was 100. I was like, I don't have 100. I got this 60. Like, like, put me on layaway. But yeah, it can get tough when it's like, hey, we require you to wear this. And it's like, is it, the ideal of looking, uniformed? It could be. But if it's like you can only buy RGs here and they're $200, like, okay.
Yeah.
There's
Suspect.
something that's not okay.
Or at least if you are going to say, okay, we want you to wear certain colors, okay, you can buy the patches, whatever.
Yeah.
That way you can buy what you can afford, what's appropriate for you. Because I know, like, for me, I don't know what it is about my size, but it's really hard for me to find a good fitting gi. Either the arms are too long or the pants are too small, but the jacket's right. And it's very, very difficult. I was thinking about making a brand for like voluptuous women for gis, because the sizing never works for
No,
us. So I was like kind of thinking about it's like maybe I can make a brand specifically for this.
and there's a market for it.
I think so. I think so. Um, but I do, if you are going to say, okay, like we have a school, we're going to have geese, we want you to buy specific ones, give them some different variations that can work within their budget. Or if, let's say, they come to you, they say, I need new gi, I can't afford this one. Can you discount it for me? Or can I do something in order to make it less expensive? Because let's face it, doing jiu-jitsu is an expensive sport. And I understand businesses need to make money. You agreed to pay that amount. Maybe you can go out and find a cheaper school to go to, but it's not an inexpensive service to receive. And so providing options to people, I think, is important to ensure that it's accessible to everyone, not just those who can necessarily, afford it.
Yeah, I like the ideal of, look, you can get a different gi wherever. Like, here's the patch. Take our patch and put it on your gi. Like our gym, that is an option for us. And I just realized I think I have one patch. I think I have one gi with the patch on. All my other gis are just standard white gis. It's like Hyperfly or Epic Roll, and it's like, but I do have patches. I'm just, was like, hey, take it over there to the tailor and get it put on. I was like, I gotta take time out of my day, go over there. Like, and I asked my wife to do it, and she's just like, I can't put these on for whatever reason. She can sew, knit, crochet. She can do all these wonderful like textile things, like that you would have done back in the Puritan days. And I was like, I just need this patch on this gauge right here on the sleeve. I can't do it. It's like trats.
Need to get the right needle for it. That was something because when I started in karate, one of the things that we used to do is someone got their yellow stripe, what they told the parents to do was like, get your parents to sew one side, and then we want you guys to sew the rest of it. So that way they at least had a sense of how to sew things. It was kind of like a cute little tradition that they did, like get mom and dad do the one side, you do the rest. And we also kind of provided the patches to people, and they can wear whatever gi they want to wear. Yeah, I think that's definitely the best option. Going back to like some of the further things within the blog. So I pulled it up because I was like, I can't remember all the points because I wrote it a little while ago. But I definitely, I think one of the things that I see a lot of, even in, I still see it sometimes in karate, but like claiming that by doing a technique a certain way, it's going to be effective. So I've seen people apply, like, I don't know, a rear naked choke very, very poorly and saying, oh, this is a rear naked choke. If you look at it, it's like that doesn't meet any of the requirements of what is a rear naked choke. It's a very poorly executed thing, which is really out of ignorance. And I've seen it that, like, instead of actually going out and learning how to actually apply this, they continue to kind of spout things that are ineffective out of ignorance without the willingness to actually learn what it really is, which again can be dangerous because again it gives a false sense of confidence to people who are learning from them, because they think, oh, I know how to do this, I know how to apply it, or they're trying to apply it out of context that's appropriate for the technique. So it's like saying, well, I'm 2 feet away from the person, I'm just going to pull on the wrist, turn them around, and then be able to apply a rear naked choke, which, as we both know, would not happen. And I think that's
Sounds
something I
easy
see.
enough.
Yeah, right. And it's not just in karate, but I do see it sometimes in other martial arts where they'll say, oh, this is a self-defense technique, when it would not be effective in any type of circumstances. And that's like it. I do think people generally think, oh, no touch knockouts, like that's
Yeah.
kind of like the big thing. But I think there's definitely more elements of things that are more insidious, and within the context of the martial arts, people do deem as, um, uh, real martial arts. Yeah.
Yeah. It's fascinating to even think. It's like, and maybe this is just my ignorance because of, doing the martial art and being in the community and being in, just involved. And it's like, oh, it just seems silly that that's a thing. But then there's the thought of like, well, you have to step outside of your own bubble and realize like the world is a big place. And for every, you know, 10, you know, gyms, whether it be karate, jiu-jitsu, judo, taekwondo, whatever it may be, for every 10 that, that's on the level, there's probably 2 out there that's like, you know, doing some fuckery. And it's like, yeah, this shit will really work in the street. There's a video I saw not too long ago, somebody showing a rear naked choke. And like you said, it's like, yeah, that's not even like, I'm surprised you're even like on the person's back, to be quite
Yeah.
honest, with all the
That's
other trash.
has none of the structural elements that is necessary to meet the definition of a rear naked choke. Yeah, no, I think that's the other thing, is like some people are delusional, like we mentioned before. Some people equate that because I know this one thing, therefore I'm going to be good at this other thing, when it's just not the case. And they think, okay, well, I saw it in a YouTube video, I'm going to try teaching it to my class, when it's really not appropriate to do if you haven't had the experience of like really training it. I think it's great for people to experiment, but if you're going to say, yes, 100%, this is what I think will work, when it should be under the explanation is like, hey guys, I saw this, let's experiment with it. I don't know it, but kind of let's see what's going on, and learn from it. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with people experimenting, but it's just when people present things that are obviously wrong, pretending they're an expert in it, that is inappropriate.
Yeah. I like when I, ask my coach a question, or anyone asks my coach a question. I mean, he's a black belt. He knows what he's talking about. But when he doesn't, though, he'll say like, look, you ask him a question like, here, come here, let's troubleshoot it. Let's look, let's physically see how this works. And then it was just like, okay, well, all right, yeah, nope, that can't be done. Or yeah, we can do it this way. Okay, well, this is a problem, so we'll have to do it this way. And I think that's kind of the whole thing with the ego. It's like there's no ego of saying like I don't know, but let's find it out together.
Yeah.
My coach on Saturday, he'll show us something, and he'll one of our other teammates there, he has a setup that he does for the Kimura differently, and our coaches asked him to come up and show it, and I think that's an important thing as well. Is like, look, you may not be well versed on something, but someone here who is, they're really really good at this one thing. And they're both higher rank. It's not like, hey, I got this white belt that does this Kimura that's a really cool way. Come here, white belt, show it. That's not to say you can't learn something from white belts. I really don't like when people say you can't learn something from someone else. We all know something that someone else doesn't know, and someone else knows something that we don't know.
Yeah, for sure. I think the key aspect, that as far as like recognizing it, is that there are fundamental principles that make techniques work, right? So, leverage, framing, um, uh, understanding intensity, what tool you're using, direction, different physics principles. So, acceleration times mass, blah, 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 all that.
Oh, you using
Um,
school words.
um, it's like these are all key elements that make what we do in martial arts work. And so it doesn't matter if it's a white belt, black belt, whatever, but when they are presenting something, it has to fall in line with those principles. And then if they're not, then it doesn't make any sense. It's so if someone's not doing specific things that maintain the functional design of movement patterns. So, for example, let's say um, a good example is like if you're trying to push a car forwards, you have to be in a slanted position because you have to be moving your body that way in order to do it. If someone's like pushing a car and they're trying to stay up, just straight up, it's not going to work because that's just not the way the physics of it work. So I think if like whether it's a white belt figures something out that's really cool, blue belt, whatever, it doesn't matter. What matters is that the principles that make something work are being applied. And the only people who generally know what those are those with a little bit more experience in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's always interesting, because people will look at a belt rank and be like, oh, well, you're this belt, you don't know this, or you're this belt and you do know this. And it's like, I mean, they're just colors on the belt at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
Funny story. I have a friend. He's very well respected. Goju-Ryu, black belt. I think fifth dan. Um, and he came to where was it? He came to a seminar for one of the styles that I do, so Kuru Chinati seminar, and he attended. It may have been like a mixed seminar, but people from our group were there, and he attended it with a white belt. And or maybe he was going to another club. Maybe it wasn't a Kuru Chinati seminar, but he went to another club or seminar wearing a white belt. And there was another black belt there who, I don't know, we may have been a second dan or third dan or whatever, a lower ranking black belt than him, didn't want to work with him because he was wearing a white belt and he thought he was a white belt and thought, well, you're not worth my time. And then of course eventually he found out, oh, he's fifth dan. He's like, oh.
my bad. Oh,
Yeah.
my buddy that came over from Ireland, he's a purple belt, and when he was visiting, he was wearing a white belt, and he and I are rolling, and he beat the brakes off of me. I was just like, oh man, come on, chill, man. Like, this is what y'all do in Ireland? Relax. But we took a picture afterward and I posted it on Instagram, and one of our teammates, he commented, was like, I knew that dude wasn't a white belt. Like, oh yeah, I mean, well, he had his purple belt with him, but he actually didn't think he was gonna. He had a foot injury, so he didn't think he was gonna participate. But as he's sitting there watching, he was like,
yeah,
can't
it's
take
hard.
it.
It's tough to watch. You want to get involved for sure.
Yeah, I've stopped myself when I'm injured. I just don't go because I don't know any better. I'm just like, look, I'll run a gi. I'll get out there, re-injure. When I injured my groin last year, like I thought, okay, 2 weeks, I'm good. I should be good, and I was not good. And then I gave it
No.
a month and a half, and I was not good. I did it. The injury happened in April. I don't think I fully recovered until maybe October or November. And the reason why the delay is because I kept trying to go back. I probably would have been better by July had I not
Yeah,
kept
man.
jumping back. So
There's no substitute for time when it comes to healing. Gotta let stuff heal.
yeah. But hey, I do dumb things a lot. That's just something else I put on the resume. It's like, so what's the dumbest thing you did? Well, I had a really bad groin injury and I went back and tried to play guard. Like,
Yeah,
really, which
yeah,
guard?
that'll
All
do
of them.
it. That'll do it. Yeah, I had the same thing with a rib injury. It's just like, and it's just until like I had it probably like over 4 years ago, probably like 5 years ago now, and it's just started to feel better. And injuries are very hard, particularly in grappling sports, because you use it. One, you're using your ribs all the time to just breathe, laugh, cough, everything.
Hiccups.
And in jiu-jitsu you're using it all the time too. So it's like if you want to keep training, what you do, even if you train light, it gets aggravated so easily. But it's not until now that it's felt better. Um and yeah, that's a tough one. I don't recommend hurting your ribs.
Yeah, I don't know which one was worse, my ribs or the groin. The ribs hurt a lot away from the mat, but when I had strained my groin really bad, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't even drive. I like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was it was like my ribs. I was scared to sneeze, but I didn't have any pain when I sneezed. But I love watching me some comedies. I was not able to laugh. Laughter hurt. For whatever reason I kept getting the hiccups,
Mm.
and it was brutal. But like sneeze, cough didn't bother me, but laughing and hiccups, it was
Mm. Must have
not
been
okay.
that would be I guess it was very specific to the diaphragm because like laughing and hiccups are like associated with I mean, coughing too, but like hiccups is like a
Like,
spasm of the diaphragm.
yeah,
So it makes sense.
it was just weird because like I hadn't had hiccups in years. Number one, and number two is like just those two specific things that really hurt. Well, I mean, other things hurt, but like those like coughing didn't bother me, and I was always terrified to sneeze. Like
Mm.
when I felt the sneeze coming on, I was so scared, and then I was sneezing. Like, oh, okay, hardly anything at all. But laughing, oh, that doesn't feel good. Hiccups, that really hurts. Coughing was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Um, but when I injured my groin, it was just like I couldn't lift my leg like the push down an accelerator, go to the brake like that. It was just that side to side, that
Yeah, yeah, I
that
know
movement.
exactly what you mean. I've had like a similar strain. Yeah, not comfortable, and it's like hard to walk and sit
Mhm.
in certain positions, and yeah, it's like certain things tweak it specifically.
And it's one of those things where it's like you take it for granted until you don't have that ability. Because I never even thought about like, oh, I'm on the accelerator. Oh, I got to go to the brake. It was like, oh man, driving is a risk today. Like, I got to hit that brake quick. Guess we all going up in a blaze. But I mean, the important thing is just take care of those injuries. When you get
Yeah,
hurt, sit it out. I know
yeah,
now.
gotta let it heal. Gotta let it heal. There's no substitute for rest.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, Jen, we've been doing this for a while here now, over 90. And it's been great chatting with you and catching up. Definitely would love to have you back on. Sooner, than we've done before, because like this has been a minute. So
Yeah, I
uh,
I feel like it was maybe been almost a year. Maybe was it the end of last year we kind of
I
chatted.
think, yeah, I want to say, ooh, I saw the episode number because I was just looking at it. Just I don't know why the numbers aren't clicking in my brain right now, but I mean, it feels like it's been a while, like a long while. I was like, that's not normal. Like normally it's like, hey, I want you to come back on, and try to reconnect, in 6 months, give us some time, let people hear the first episode, like come back. It's like, oh, they're back. So it'll be a pleasant listen for everyone for sure. But before we get out of here, do you have any shout outs or mentions that you would like to leave our listeners with here?
Um, I
Oh,
don't
you've been
know.
here before. You should have been prepared.
Well, if you want to check out my Instagram page, you can check out the Martial Arts Muse. If you want to check out my blog, themartialartsmuse.com. Please do, for some interesting posts on, karate, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, things like that. And if you would like, you can check out my husband's blog as well. He is the martial poet. He also has some great writings on martial arts, so check him out too.
All right. I'll be sure to put the links up in the show notes. And also, don't sell yourself short on the memes too. You got some memes that pop up on here.
So. Oh yeah, I'm into the world of the memes right now. It's a fun little hobby to get into. Some of them have done actually quite well, which I was very pleased with.
Yeah, the meme world gets a little chaotic at times, but it's almost like a drug. Making them, reposting them, looking at them is like, oh man, like I gotta go to bed. Let me out of here. But I'll be sure to put everything up in the show notes so everyone knows where to find you.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much.
No problem, and thank you for making the time, especially coming home right from work. So I know that's never the easiest times to get online. And for all my listeners out there, thank you so much. We do appreciate you. If you have any questions, concerns, criticisms, you want to be a guest even, or you have a topic that might be interesting, you want to hear it talked about, I don't know why anybody would say, Dante, you should talk about this topic, because I'm no expert. But you know what? I find people to have great conversations with about good topics. So if y'all got something, send it my way. You can find me at bjj.wiki on Instagram, or you can find me at Off the Mats Podcast also on Instagram. You can email me. You've heard it before. I look at it sometimes. Actually, I check the email every day. It's just a lot of stuff goes to spam, and I get scared because I think people are trying to like scam me out of money like that I don't have. So I'm really hesitant about responding to some emails. Like someone just told me recently, hey, we want to feature your podcast on our online magazine, and it was a falsehood. So and they wanted me to sign up, and then it was like gonna steal my data. It's no thanks, guys. Instagram already has my data, so I'm already taken. I want to give a big shout out though to all of you guys listeners. So thank you. We love you guys. I also want to shout out my crew over there at Nerd Rage Radio: Bobby, Chris, Joe, Marilyn, Phil, Ricky, Ticky, Chucky, Raul, everyone over there. Nerd Rage Radio, love you guys. If it was for Nerd Rage, I wouldn't be doing podcasts. I probably would, but they really help usher the way. And they help along with other podcasts such as So You Like Horror. That's my other one. If y'all like scary movies, go check that out. We just watched the movie Long Legs, and we just did a review on that movie. So if you care to hear what my wife and I had to say about it, go check it out. If you don't care, then don't go check it out. I don't care. I got horror fans over there that like it too, but I want to introduce some of my grapplers to it. So I'll go check that out too. So You Like Horror, or find that on Instagram. So You Like Horror, all the words separated by underscores. And last but not least, I want to give a big shout out to the martial arts muse, Miss Jennifer Thompson. Thank you very much. And be sure to go check her out. The links will be in the show notes, or you just go on over there to her Instagram, the martial arts muse. Otherwise, we love you all as listeners and as people and as humans. That's the same thing, doubled up again. You guys keep listening. We're going to definitely keep making these shows. Thank you, everyone, and ciao.
Deep with it. Now let me sing a song.